Hi guys, it's me, Miss Ransom. I just wanted to hop on here because we're gonna go ahead and start our new fantasy unit, which I'm so excited about. I know I talked about this while we were still at school, but this is like my pride and joy. It's my favorite, absolute favorite unit that we do during 5th grade. So this is our fantasy unit, and the read aloud text that I wanted to introduce to you today, we're actually gonna start the first chapter today. I'll do a chapter a day, most likely, maybe even one on the weekend too. I'll be writing in my reader's notebook. You can see I already have my anchor chart and a little bit written on there. And yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. I'll do my read aloud and then I'll do a quick little mini lesson, not as expanded, not as extensive as I would in the classroom just because of time constraints and not having you all available to turn and talk and whatnot. So it's really just going to be me doing the read aloud and then me kind of teaching you what is this point that you should focus on, what am I going to focus on as the reader, and what should you be looking for as you start the fantasy book that you'll be reading for the next few weeks, The Sisters Grimm. So you'll be reading it this week and next week, and then you'll get through it. So that's a fantasy book also. So the reason I'm doing this is because I want to prepare you for what to kind of look for as you're reading fantasy. So this is called The Thief of Always, and this is written by Clive Barker. And as you can see, I have my reader's notebook out. I know you don't have a notebook there. If you do, have it out, just like you did for one for the Murphys. If you don't, have some piece of paper out or something to write on or type with, because good readers are good writers. So you have to have something to be writing with. That's just what good readers do, and this will help prepare you for middle school. All right, so this is The Thief of Always by Clive Barker. Go ahead and get started with chapter 1, and chapter 1 is called Harvey Half Devoured. The great gray beast, February, had eaten Harvey Swick alive. Here he was, buried in the belly of that smothering month, wondering if he would ever find his way out through the cold coils that lay between here and Easter. He didn't think much of his chances. More than likely, he'd become so bored as the hours crawled by that one day he'd simply forget to breathe. Then maybe people would get to wondering why such a fine young lad had perished in his prime. It would become a celebrated mystery, which wouldn't be solved until some great detective decided to recreate a day in Harvey's life. Then, and only then, would the grim truth be discovered. The detective would first follow Harvey's route to school every morning, trekking through the dismal streets. Then he'd sit at Harvey's desk and listen to the pitiful drone of the history teacher and the science teacher, and wonder how the heroic boy had managed to keep his eyes open. And finally, as the wasted day dwindled to dusk, he'd trace the homeward trek, and as he set foot on the step from which he had departed that morning, and people asked him, as they would, why such a sweet soul as Harvey had died, he would shake his head and say, "It's very simple." "Oh?" the curious crowd would say, "Do tell." And, brushing away a tear, the detective would reply, Harvey Swick was eaten by the great gray beast, February. It was a monstrous month, that was for sure, a dire and dreary month. The pleasures of Christmas, both sharp and sweet, were already dimming in Harvey's memory, and the promise of summer was so remote as to be mythical. There'd be a spring break, of course, but how far off was that? 5 weeks? 6? Mathematics wasn't his strong point, so he didn't irritate himself further by attempting, and failing, to calculate the days. He simply knew that long before the sun came to save him, he would have withered away in the belly of the beast. So we have Harvey, and he is our 10-year-old boy. "You shouldn't waste your time sitting up here," his mom said when she came in and found him watching the raindrops chase each other down the glass of his bedroom window. "I've got nothing better to do," Harvey said without looking around. "Well then, you can make yourself useful," his mom said. Harvey shuddered. Useful? That was another word for hard labor. He sprang up, marshaling his excuses. He hadn't done this, he hadn't done that, but it was too late. "You can start by tidying up this room," his mom said. "But..." "Don't sit wishing the days away, honey. Life's too short, but that's a good boy. And with that, she left him to it. Muttering to himself, he stared around the room. It wasn't even untidy. There were 1 or 2 games scattered around, a couple of drawers open, a few clothes hanging out. It looked just fine. I am 10, he said to himself, having no brothers and sisters. He talked to himself a good deal. I mean, it's not like I'm a kid. I don't have to tidy up just because she says so. It's boring. He wasn't just muttering now. He was talking out loud. I want to. He went to the mirror and quizzed it. What do I want? The straw-haired, snub-nosed, brown-eyed boy he saw before him shook his head. I don't know what I want, he said. I just know I'll die if I don't have some fun. I'll die. As he spoke, the window rattled. A gust of wind blew hard against it. Then a second, then a third. And even though Harvey didn't remember the window being so much as an inch ajar, it was suddenly thrown open. One moment. Cold rain spattered his face. Half closing his eyes, he crossed to the window and fumbled to slam it, making sure that the latch was in place this time. The wind had started his lamp moving, and when he turned back, the whole room seemed to be swinging around. One moment, the light was blazing in his eyes. The next, it was flooding the opposite wall. But in between the blaze and the flood, it lit the middle of his room. And standing there, shaking the rain off his hat, was a stranger. He looked harmless enough. He was no more than 6 inches taller than Harvey, his frame scrawny, his skin distinctly yellowish in color. He was wearing a fancy suit, a pair of spectacles, and a lavish smile. Who are you? Harvey demanded, wondering how he could get past this interloper to the door. Don't be nervous, the man replied, teasing off one of his suede gloves, taking Harvey's hand and shaking it. My name's Rictus. You are Harvey Swick, aren't you? Yes. I thought for a moment I got the wrong home. Harvey couldn't take his eyes off Rictus's grin. It was wide enough to shame a shark, with 2 perfect rows of gleaming teeth. Rictus took off his spectacles, pulled a handkerchief from the pocket of his waterlogged jacket, then started to mop off the raindrops. Either he or the handkerchief gave off an odor that was far from fragrant. The smell, in truth, was flatulent. You've got questions, I can see that, Rictus said to Harvey. Yeah? Ask away, I've got nothing to hide. Well, how did you get in, for one thing? Through the window, of course. It's a long way up from the street. Not if you're flying. Flying? Of course. How else was I going to get around on a foul night like this? It was either that or a rowboat. We short folk gotta watch out when it's raining this hard. One wrong step and you're swimming. He peered at Harvey quizzically. Do you swim? In the summer, sometimes, Harvey replied, wanting to get back to the business of flying. But Rictus took the conversation in another direction entirely. On nights like this, he said, doesn't it seem like there'll never be another summer? Sure does, said Harvey. You know, I heard you sighing a mile off, and I said to myself, there's a kid who needs a vacation. He consulted his watch. If you've got the time, that is. The time? For a trip, boy, for a trip. You need an adventure, young Swick. Somewhere. Out of this world. How'd you hear me sighing when you were a mile away? Harvey wanted to know. Why should you care? I heard you. That's all that matters. Is it magic of some kind? Maybe. Why won't you tell me? Rictus gave Harvey a stare. I think you're too inquisitive for your own good. That's why. He said, his smile decaying a little. If you don't want help, that's fine by me. He made a move toward the window. The wind was still gusting against the glass, as though eager to come back in and carry its passenger away. Wait, Harvey said. For what? I'm sorry, I won't ask any more questions. Rictus halted. his hand on the latch. No more questions, eh? I promise, said Harvey. I told you, I'm sorry. So you did. Rictus peered out at the rain. I know a place where the days are always sunny, he said, and the nights are full of wonders. Could you take me there? We said no questions, boy, we agreed. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Being a forgetting sort, I'll forget you spoke. And I'll tell you this, if you want me to inquire on your behalf, I'll see if they've got a room for another guest. I'd like that. I'm not guaranteeing anything, Rictus said, opening the latch. I understand. The wind gusted suddenly and blew the window wide. The light began to swing wildly. Watch for me, Rictus yelled above the din of rain and wind. Harvey started to ask him if he'd be coming back soon, but stopped himself in the nick of time. No questions, boy, Rictus said. And as he spoke, the wind seemed to fill up his coat. It rose around him like a black balloon, and he was suddenly swept out over the windsill. Questions rot the mind, he hollered as he went. Keep your mouth shut and we'll see what comes your way. And with that, the wind carried him off, the balloon of his coat rising like a black moon against the rainy sky. And that is the end of chapter 1. So a lot happened. It might not seem like a lot happened, but a lot happened in this first chapter. So we have Harvey, who's a 10-year-old boy, and our problem is that he's bored and doesn't want to be at home or at school. And he's just miserable and he's depressed. And so a possible solution is that he's going to some holiday house, or not holiday house, he's going to some house that Rictus, or not, we don't even know if it's a house, but Rictus is taking him to this place and he doesn't know. Possibly he's taking him there. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with a quick little mini lesson just to give you an idea of what Miss Ransom is going to kind of focus on for her first read aloud, what skill to focus on. And I want to kind of just give you a breakdown of what fantasy is and why is fantasy so awesome and why is Miss Ransom literally obsessed with fantasy. So I kind of have 3 points I'm going to just kind of read off here. The first reason of why fantasy is so amazing and why they're experts of fantasy for a reason. One is because the stories are incredible. They have everything to offer. They're wild, they're dangerous, they're unexpected. You have the good, you have the bad. You have these people that want to be better than other people. They have magic, there's tricks, there's everything it has to offer. The second reason, when you're studying fantasy, you're actually kind of studying human conditions. So kind of like good versus evil. A person who has maybe more seniority or is superior to people or thinks that they're superior to people. And there's that kind of thing of power and how it kind of affects the world. And then the last reason is when you're an expert on fantasy, you are that much better of a reader in general. So Miss Ransom personally didn't used to be a great reader, but as I read more fantasy, the better I become because fantasy has so many layers to it. It's so challenging and complicated, but if you break it down piece by piece, you become that much better of a reader in general. So today I want to teach you that expert fantasy readers focus right off the bat when they're reading fantasy on the setting. And we know that the setting is the time and the place. So Miss Ransom is going to kind of dig apart this first chapter in Harvey Swick and the Thief of Always and what the setting is and kind of how it affects our characters. So I kind of already did this. So we have our setting here, and I said that our setting currently is Harvey Swick's house. And I kind of thought about how does Harvey feel when he's at his house? Is he happy? Is he sad? How does he feel? And I said that Harvey Swick, it makes Harvey feel depressed, bored, lonely, and angry when he's at his house. And this is why Rictus magically appeared and is saying, I can take you somewhere where it's sunshine and the night has wonders and it's going to be amazing and you're going to have so much fun. And this is kind of giving Harvey that kind of sense of excitement and kind of joy, and he's expecting that something good might possibly happen in the future. So what I want you to do is when you start the fantasy unit tomorrow for yourself, you're going to be reading the Sisters Grimm, and I want you to kind of focus on right off the bat, you'll be reading chapter 1, but for this whole week, I want you to really think about the setting and how does it affect the characters, mainly the main characters, not the minor characters that don't really have a big role, but how does it affect the main characters? And then obviously I'm going to do another mini lesson tomorrow and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week. And I'll be reading about a chapter a day and doing a quick little mini lesson so you have skills to focus on when you're reading. So again, make sure you have your reader's notebook ready, something to write on so that you can reflect while you're reading. And hopefully you enjoy this and be ready to come back with chapter 2 tomorrow. And I hope you're looking forward to it.